it's a new concept that we probably have to get used to by way of logistics. You build up points depending on the targets you hit, and then you can the logistics that you could spend on what you're successful in.
I'm joined today by Shaun Pinner, former British serviceman and Ukrainian Marine. Thank you for sparing the time.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking to come on.
Ukraine has recently launched a new battlefield scheme where frontline units can earn reward points, which they can then spend to buy equipment from an online marketplace, which has been nicknamed the Amazon of War. Can you tell me a little bit more about this point system? How do units earn points? How is it measured? That kind of thing.
Well, bonus schemes in any combat situation, they're not a new thing. I mean, it's a modern technology, a modern advance, really, on the systems. And really, I mean, even from my day, I never served under this, but even from my day, we used to get bonus schemes for even the Minsk agreement for not breaching the ceasefire, not responding to it with fire, combat pay. So, yeah, like I said, it's not a new thing. Innovative as well. I mean, we have to take into consideration this is a new war unlike we've ever seen before. I mean, drones are the new artillery, the new sniper, the new everything, and supply and logistics for drones on the back of a reward scheme. Generally, it's a new concept that we probably have to get used to by way of logistics. You build up points depending on the targets you hit, and then you can the logistics that you could spend on what you're successful in really adapted the and hitting on the positions. So it is a new concept. It's something. I mean, when I first joined the military, we didn't even have phones. Now we've got 1984 Terminator with drones coming 10 feet above the ground, and you've got fiber optics now that make that clearer, that picture clearer, the final impact. So it's inevitable that units are going to be rewarded for success. So it's something we've got to get used to.
So, presumably, this sort of additional equipment that units are able to buy is on top of what they need to be effective in the first place. But is this able to make the units more nimble and get the equipment that they themselves are best using and adapt it in that way? Why aren't they being given this sort of equipment in the first place?
Well, from my time in the Ukrainian military, when I got there in 2018, it's very still Soviet doctrine and centralized command. We were slowly moving away from that over with the joint exercises like Sea Breeze, working with NATO troops. And a lot of the successes we had in the early days, even I put down to Mariupol, holding for 7 weeks, was being able to slot into positions where if you had, like my platoon had 60% casualties, you had guys slotted in who understood the roles. Whereas I would say if Russia had attacked 3 years earlier, probably a bit of different army, to be honest, from when I got there in 2018. So, it had changed, and this is just another step. It's moving away from that centralized command, that central base of being able to outsource the equipment and adapt quite fast to the surroundings. And even on the front lines, you know, compared to NATO troops who are quite stuck in their ways and very not as flexible, I found working with Ukrainian troops that adaptability, being able to, I mean, you can go to, if you haven't got a red dot, you can go down the shop and buy one. It's like, it's pretty much like that. You can adapt the team to your surroundings. This is just another step of hopefully smoothing the logistics chain to those positions where they need the weapons and a specific type of weapons. So,
Ukraine has said that the scheme is designed to increase battlefield morale as well as increase sort of data collection and sort of recording of exactly what's happening on the front line. Do you think this will work to help motivate troops?
for sure, I think as harsh as it sounds, you've got to remember what soldiers actually do. They are brought in to kill the enemy and win. And that's ultimately as hard as it sounds for some people to understand when that's your job and you're defending your country and defending your sovereignty, there is no points for second place. And that's quite hard for some people to hear. We've got into a role as such of the West looking at soldiers as peacekeepers and UN, working with the UN and, not really combat soldiers. But this is really the bread and butter. And yes, it does. If there's things you don't mess with the military. One is your pay, two is your food, and your rest and recuperation. And you're looking at probably logistics too. Once if you haven't got the tools to be able to do the job, then that could really drop your morale. So I think a lot of these ideas are innovative. I think they're on the basis of really what's being said on the front. They need the volunteer community here. Without them as well, supplying uh, Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines with their requirements, even from 2022, I think we'd be struggling. So, they do listen. It is innovative. It is new ideas, and if it speeds up logistics, I think it would be a success if it's you know if it's done right and managed right.
So there are some critics of the system saying that this is, well, quite literally commodifying death. What are your thoughts on that sort of aspect of this scheme?
As a combat soldier, no. I think it's. Can you hear me? Okay. As a combat soldier, I don't think it's changed anything really. Some people in my day back in the early 90s went to war for you got paid extra to go and work in the UN in operational areas, operational zones. You got combat pay, hazard pay. It's a bonus. You go away for 6 months, you get additional bonus money. The fact that you're killing people to get you're not doing anything different. If push comes to shove, you're doing exactly the same thing. Yeah, it's you could argue that there's a moral basis, but there is no second place. If this works, they win. Ukraine wins, and if it doesn't work, they've lost their country. I mean, I don't believe in that. It's not. It's ethically, it's not the right stance because at the end of the day, we wouldn't be in this position if Russia hadn't invaded.
Practically as well, some people have cited incidents where units are competing over the same objectives, the same targets, with some using drones to fully destroy a tank, for example, to get the destruction points, whereas the previous unit had got the disabling points for that tank. Is that something that's going to be a larger issue?
I think those things are beyond that. It's a competitive drive thing. I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. I mean, naturally, if you're a battalion or platoon on the front line, your arc should be crossing anyway. So you shouldn't be leaving gaps. So your left and right of arc, even at platoon, section, or company level, those arcs should be crossing over with your neighbor. And if that neighbor happens to be another battalion, then you're going to get those instances anyway. So that really is, I think, a small problem. If we're arguing about winning territory by demobilizing tanks, then I think that's only a positive gripe, not a negative one. Does it take up resources? You could argue. Maybe. Maybe people are always going to manipulate commission system of any sort. That's always going to be the case. So that is something I'm sure would have been properly thought out at a higher level anyway. That's good competitive behaviour. Soldiers want to succeed and want to be the best and shine, and that gets you, recognition and that you're defending your country. So that's why medals were invented. You did something brave and courageous. You got awarded for it. So this policy is no different. To be fair.
And so there's obviously quite a few parallels between this scheme and a video game, for example, where you get more kills or captures, and then you can then go away and buy upgrades. Essentially, is this in some way? Is this also potentially a bit of a shrewd move to engage a younger demographic, which has been typically quite reluctant to join in wars?
Not just younger demographic. You got to remember the British Army. If you've got one leg shorter than the other, you're suffering a medical condition. You're not going to get in the military. And what Ukraine has done is those guys that have always wanted to be in the military who could get in, they've now got a position with something like as a drone operator or building drones or being a part of supporting some a country like Ukraine who's defending their sovereignty when previously in any walk of life they wouldn't have got into the military. So it is appealing to younger people, but also appealing, something like a drone operator appeals to those who, are not physically able to be in the infantry or the front lines or, doing anything sort of physically strenuous. So, hence you've got, everyone from 18 to 60 who's now on the front lines, which, I've worked with guys who have their place, even if they are in their 50s. I was a Marine, um, and I was jumping out of MIA helicopters doing my Marine beret test as a section commander at 46. So I never saw myself there at 46, but don't if you've got the ability to do it, you'll do it. So I don't think again it's yeah, there's a certain advertising to it. People look to there's a lot of misconceptions about drone operators that they sit in an armchair in the rear. That's not the case at all. They're quite often on the problem areas on the front line providing cover. Our drone operators are still operated in Mariupol. We were encircled by about 200 kilometers. So, they don't sit in the rear. I think you have to filter in the military between official gripes and what's actually a legitimate concern. So, and there's quite a lot of gripes in the military, as you probably well know. But you have to filter those out.
So on the whole, a good idea then?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have to adopt change. We have to try it. Not everything's going to work. I think we have to incentivize success as well. Considering it's quite tough at the moment. I certainly don't have an issue with that. Like for the reasons I've just said, you kind of understand what you're doing as a soldier, especially in Ukraine. It's essentially the first 6 weeks of any basic training soldier in Britain is combat training. Whether you're a chef or an engineer, the fact that you're being incentivized to succeed at that when you are in the front lines and you are defending your country, I don't have an moral issue with that. Russia should, if you've got a moral issue with it, you should be asking why Russia invaded. I think
Shaun Pinner, thank you for talking to me today.
no problem. Thank you for having me.